You have seen through the lies, the gaslighting, the false equivalencies, the propaganda. They tried to pit your families against you. They tried to turn your friends against you. They tried to fire you, and you are still here. You are still standing. You held the line. Give yourselves a hand. That's right.
As things are tapering off, firefighters, first responders are being fired over this.
Yeah, it's extremely important to push back because there's government overreach that step on the rights of individuals.
So if we let them take this much, they'll keep taking more and more and more. And so we have to draw a line somewhere, and there needs to be boundaries.
Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Hello, my name is Siobhan. It is March 19, 2022, and I'm in Times Square at the Worldwide Freedom Rally, where people are gathering to protest for the right to freedom of speech, movement, choice, assembly, and health. So how have the COVID policies affected you?
Well, foremost, they've affected me by taking my job away. Even though I worked at the Department of Education for 15 years, working with special education children.
So throughout the height of COVID, we did our jobs. And now, as things are tapering off, firefighters, first responders are being fired over this. And people need to understand that's putting people's lives at risk.
For me personally, I'm a teacher in Jersey City. I work with a lot of kids that are, in really tough situations. Early on, I did get the shot. I haven't been boosted or anything, but I see it every day with my colleagues, the way it's fractured people, the way it's fractured traditional political alliances. I don't want to just sound conspiratorial, but it's about as psyop-y as it seems.
I'm personally facing a April 1st deadline to get vaxxed, both shots. Otherwise, I'm not sure what they're going to do. They might just can a lot of us in the middle of a semester, which is going to create chaos.
Are there a lot of teachers who in CUNY who are also fighting the mandates, or no?
I can't say that there's a lot. There's a few.
Right now, 9 firefighters have been fired, and I believe over 20 EMS workers have been fired. And there are 600 right now pending religious exemptions, and a couple of hundred have been put on leave without pay, and I'm one of them, and my husband is one of them.
I was one of those that was affected due to the mandates that went in effect back in September 2021, and I'm just demanding we all need to have equal rights, vaccinate our own vaccine.
Why do you think it's important to push back against mandates?
Mandates are just a violation of the most basic civil rights over your own body.
Because I think what we're just seeing is the tip of the iceberg of the control mechanisms that they want to implement on us as citizens, and we can't let that happen. And when you look at history and any revolution that has ever been fought, it always starts off with what they call a fringe movement, but it's really we're the voices that are bubbling over, and people have had enough, and people are scared to speak out. And in that group of people, there has to be someone that finally says, enough, we can't stand for this.
Yeah, it's extremely important to push back because there's government overreach that step on the rights of individuals. And a lot of these are politicized ways of looking at public policy and public health, where there's a whole diversity and spectrum of opinions by medical professionals. And when there's a monolithic pattern that everyone has to be crushed into, undoubtedly there's going to be violence done to the conscience and rights of others.
The people coming together for one united thing, I don't think they planned on this, right? They were planning on us rolling over, complying, and moving on to the next thing. But look behind us. We have an army. And we have connected with all over the nation, with first responders all over the world. We have 7 different countries that we partner with: Australia, Belgium, Germany. We're having conversations worldwide, connecting on one common goal. That's the biggest fear that the governments can have right now, is the people standing up for one cause, not being segregated and divided anymore.
Well, because if they start with those kind of restrictions, the government can use any type of emergency to do more, to take more away from our freedoms. And so regardless of whatever emergency that they might be, we still own it to ourselves to still have our individual rights.
The mandates aren't over. This is simply what you could call this halftime of the halftime show, And people just think it's an infringement of liberties. It's it's just the more restrictions, you can't get a job, you can't you can't send your kids to school. Like it's just like more and more like restrictions, and the more you comply, the more it's just like it's a total infringement of civil liberties.
Because it's going to infringe on our future liberties. So if we let them take this much, they'll keep taking more and more and more. And so we have to draw a line somewhere, and there needs to be boundaries, especially when it comes to your body. I feel like this, and this is my spiel all the time, and that's this. We pay taxes, we stop at red lights, we pay insurance, we do all the things that we're supposed to do as citizens, all right? The only thing we have is our bodies. So I think that's where the line needs to be drawn, and to make the decision on your own is important.
Because it's our right to choose, bottom line. Because whenever there's risk involved, there should be a choice.
What do you think about the media's lack of coverage or coverage of events like these?
Oh, I mean, it's like, I don't know which is worse, right? A lack of coverage or just a total, like, just, attack mode on everybody who's here, So, I mean, it's obviously terrible. There's no space for debate. This whole idea that, like, if you don't have expertise, right, you can't discuss things, right? If you weren't in, like, that clinical experience, right, you shouldn't even be able to discuss things that affect your life and, people's bodies and, like, a society at large, too. So I think it's terrible. And we're bombarded every day with constant gaslighting in corporate media.
Well, most of the media is liberal, so they prefer not to acknowledge us because they would have to acknowledge that people who aren't diehard conservatives aren't stereotypical conservatives who are like liberal, unionists and teachers are also against these mandates. It doesn't fall into the sort of like alt-right narrative that they have about the anti-mandate movement.
They either have the ideology of scientism, which is that anything that comes out of the mouth of Dr. Anthony Fauci is good coin no matter what kind of lack of evidence they have.
Well, because I believe that the media is suppressing information, and I believe that they don't want to see opposition or to show opposition to other people because they're scared that other people, even if they're vaccinated, might wake up and realize that there's something is going wrong.
Oh, I think it's definitely intentional. The bias is there because there's a lot of money involved in all of this throughout the world. I mean, you think about the billions and billions of masks, hand sanitizer, protective gear. And so, I mean, the people who run those organizations, they also, advertise. Plus, there's the political element, the strong political element. And much of major media is owned by a small handful of people who are politically invested. And so they don't want the voice of the typical American to be heard on this.
Because they want to instill fear on the public. And if you just read news headlines and don't go outside and just like see what's actually going on, then you can't get a real perception of what is actually happening and make your own informed choices. But a lot of people's beliefs are like predicated on what like has happened and what they've heard from the past year. And to admit that they're wrong would like kind of just like it's a huge blow to like your confidence, your ego, your like identity. People like have like everything's so fragile. This is a very like fragile house of cards, and all it just takes, you can just like slip one and the whole thing will tumble over.
They're not covering these protests because it doesn't align with the elite.
They can't say, so they don't say. So they just keep pushing what they're told to say. Because they all have a narrative that they follow. And it's state-run media, and they are the left arm of the Democratic Party, and they're fake news because they don't tell the whole story.
What do you think people who are pro-restrictions are missing?
I think they're missing the fact that we cannot live in fear. I think they're missing critical thinking skills, and I think they're missing the fact that this is government overreach and they're being manipulated through fear and propaganda.
I believe they have good intentions. Like they believe that the vaccine is 100% safe, which I don't know. Everyone can make their own decisions about that and make that decision for themselves. But they believe that if we keep listening, if we keep complying, they believe that all the they believe the road to recovery. Like they believe that people like us are like potholes in the road of recovery, and that complacence and listening to the government's word is like we'll cover those potholes. It's like if we just listen, if we just follow, if we just comply, then everything will be better. And you guys are like selfish people that obviously don't care about humanity. That's what they want to label anyone who goes against the media.
They're not quote saving lives by just like, you know, like constantly pushing this idea that like we just have to keep these restrictions in place. And it's like, it is a laptop class type issue. People that like are able to work from home, that are usually people that they're not out making things with their hands. They're not actually physically doing stuff. They're not like, you know, in the world of whether it be construction or, you know, any kind of thing where like you're physically engaged in your day-to-day life. Their input output, like, you know, data managers, you know, they're sort of like, you know, mid-level professionals that, you know, their jobs, I mean, for them, they make a lot of money, aren't essential, yeah. But so there's a difference between like, I guess the physicals and like, you know, the sort of the people that live sort of in that remote realm.
They're missing courage. They're not courageous, and it's easier to fall in line than to see the reality of things. So I don't think that they don't see it. I don't think they're missing anything. I just think it's too rough and it's too hard to be out the box like we are.
They're not really following the science at all, because none of these mitigation strategies have been proven scientifically to be effective.
There are a lot of Americans coming from diverse backgrounds who agree on this, that it's not a politically, you know, a conservative or progressive. People come from all backgrounds and are standing up for freedom. And I think the media really does not like this idea that there's a cross-section of folks who are standing up for liberty. They really don't want to see this. They like painting it in a very, you know, with a very fine line so it can easily be dismissed. But the reality is it's a broad-based coalition of people.
Freedom over fear.
What I've seen today is this is not the left-right issue that the media is making it seem. This is a workers' rights issue. These people are firefighters, teachers, healthcare workers that just want to go back to work, have had their livelihood stripped from them. This is a war on the people.